Hey, good morning, everybody. How y'all doing? I think Karis is going to be joining us soon. This is Ashonda at large. There he is. Karis, you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you. Uh,
Okay.
all right. That was my first attempt at trying to do an introduction. Let me get on back to here. Let me see something. Okay, here we go. All right, how am I sounding, everybody? If you can hear me, put a one in the chat. If not, put a two. Okay, well, let me see what's going on here. Okay. All right. I appreciate it. Okay. Well, here's what's going to happen because somehow, some way, when I tried to get everything together for my technical presentation, that messed me on up. So, what I'm going to do, I'll have to kind of monitor on a couple of screens. So, other than that, let me go ahead and redo my introduction. Okay. All right. So Ashonda, thank you for being on here. I tried to get Teo short notice and also Dante and a couple other folks. But I want to first say, family, shalom, salama, siemi, shalawam, and greetings today. This is a momentous day because we see how the Most High has been going and doing in well throughout the world. So I wanted to kind of throw this broadcast on out there because I know Sister Shonda is going to have something later on, and that's going to be at 11. And I believe that will definitely be a good one because that's when all the craziness will will start to manifest. So before everything starts to manifest, I wanted to kind of open up this fast, and I know that for us in America throughout the world, I'm on Eastern Standard Time, and I wanted to be sensitive of all of us because I know that there's folks checking in from the UK, some folks from the West Coast, and so I know right now on the West Coast is about 8:30, and in the and from there. So I want to first open this on up in prayer, and so let me go ahead and get this started. Father, Most High, the Elohim, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God of Israel, through your Son, Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus Christ. I thank you, Father, for what you are doing. I thank you, Father, for how you are doing in terms of what you are providing to your people. whether we are of your bloodline or through your son's blood and covering, as a stranger, as a Gentile. Father, continue to help us in this trying time. Because we know, Father, that as the days are getting darker, we know that you are getting closer. In your name, Yeshua HaMashiach. Hallelujah. All right, so Sister Shonda, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, Karis. I can hear you. How you doing, man?
Well, I am doing pretty good on a chilly morning in Tampa.
Oh,
I got
wow.
up this morning, it was at 60 degrees. And I mean 60 degrees in Florida. That's
Yeah.
that's almost like you're ready for a snowstorm.
Yes,
Right.
yes. I feel you there. I feel you. I remember those 60-degree cold freezes in Florida. I remember them. Thanks for having me on, man. Thank you so much. Salama, everybody. Good to see you all.
So so I wanted to kind of come on out here in a time of fellowship. I see that we have watching right now 36. So if you can go ahead and like and share, I definitely will appreciate that. I didn't want to step on people's toes, and I don't like stepping on people's toes. I saw Shonda was doing this about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and honestly, I was praying about it, and the Holy Spirit has said, just go ahead and do the live, because usually I will just do I'll just do a video, and I'm pretty concise on the video of how I want to approach things and go from there. But hopefully, if we have some folks coming on in this panel, we can kind of get a little bit more in depth of what we're seeing. And so Shonda, I know you're going to have something different, which is great. We're all about variety. Nobody wants to see the same thing over and over again, because here's the thing, I don't like to see the same thing over and over again,
Right.
but I want to see there's some takeaways, because here's the thing, I know that I did this early in the day because we're going to see some straight foolishness throughout the day. We've already seen it. They said a man had shot at 3 people because the man thought that they were taking away Trump signs at the polling place.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's going crazy. But you have to understand, this is that spiritual warfare that's going on. And I mean, even Truth Unveiled 777, he had he did a video about what was going on in Spain. And if you are a Patreon of Teo, he showed a video also from Rupley of folks in Spain just going through the streets. But isn't that coincidental? Which it isn't. All this is happening right now. We see that great reset occurring. The archbishops were approaching Trump about the reset. I forgot what his name was, but it was mainstream. But we already saw that, because you got to understand, family, they would rather cut their nose to spite their face.
Oh yeah.
They're showing their true colors. And honestly, I look at it like this. You already know. For me, I'm not going to vote. It's really why I'm not going to waste my time. I'm not going to waste my gas, and I'm not going to waste my sanity in something that wasn't for
That's right.
And so, Sister Shonda, tell me how that sentiment is on the islands on over there. Because
Well, voting is extremely serious here. Okay, very, very serious. But just like in Washington D.C., there's no access to voting on the federal level. So here, the voting is for the local senators, and the governor, his voting again will be probably in the next 2 years, I believe. But yeah, this is actually this they make this an official holiday. So people are off that they may have the opportunity to go out there and vote. And I'm talking about, they got the bullhorns, they've got the whole schools turned into the polling centers, and I mean it's a very, very big deal here in the islands. Actually, my family is very politically affluent here, so I know quite a few people, which makes me such an outsider in a way, because I don't engage in the voting process at all. I see it as not just a waste of time. I just see it when we lend ourselves to the system, that we are making our members a part of what they agree with. So I tend to be on the outside of my family in that regard. They take the voting process very seriously here, but I feel like, in my opinion, that we do more on the grassroots level than we do going to the government, be it local or federal. We do way more on the grassroots level for our people, because you still have to continue the system. You have to perpetuate the system of white supremacy, because this is still the U.S. Virgin Islands. So at the end of the day, if you're going to engage in that process, then you still have to play by their rules. So my thing is for me personally, is to disengage from it on the political side, and to engage our people way more on the grassroots level, and also, which is primary, which we're doing right now, which we're doing tonight, which is to consult with the Most High. Because when we consult with Him, then He directs all of our paths, and that's what our people have to just get out of this matrix. But I'm the crazy one, so it's all good though.
well, don't feel bad, because obviously we're all crazy. Okay, it's funny being crazy up until the time that all the craziness that you were, and I and everybody else. I was listening to Teo, to Dante, to Pastor Omar, to Pastor Darby, to everybody that was in the primary awakening movement. And I would say the primary awakening movement that began to fuel the actual what the UA community would call the moderates. And here's the thing: you can wake up to identity and being in the truth, but if you don't have any type of spirit, you are a clanging instrument. I mean, you're a clanging sound, and that's what I had on my video yesterday. And so I think in this time frame, we see the church is trying to address something that's purely spiritual in a physical manner. And you cannot just say, well, I have a Band-Aid of this, I have a Band-Aid of that, and that's where we're seeing. I looked at that and I said, look, you have to have a spiritual force or a spiritual element behind anything that goes on in the United States. We've been so caught up on conspiracy theories of, the music industry. That's why I had brought up Mace. I really don't listen to music like I had, and so, because I used to be consumed in music, but then I realized what music was doing, and I realized the spiritual nature of what was going on, just like television, just like anything that we do. And now I look at it from the standpoint of we cannot engage our minds, certainly for me, and what we have been feeding our eyes and our ears and putting in our mouth, that was just regurgitating the system. And I believe right now, we were disengaging. Think about this. In 2018, 2019, we started to disengage. And then what happened in these last 9 months, these last 10 months, the Most High actually forced us to disengage as a whole. And so I like to read all these stories, I like to read all these articles, and it says, well, you know what? The banking system isn't as strong as they were making it out to be. And let me tell you, when they have those little puff pieces, those little pieces in the Wall Street Journal and Financial Times and all these other business publications, they're trying to actually tell you, hey, this system is falling apart. If you haven't moved your money, if you haven't hedged your money, if you haven't prepared yourself for rough times ahead, then you're a fool. Because, see, we didn't know how to read within the lines.
That's right.
Because we were engaged in a different level. We were engaged where we were just blinded. And it's hard to actually see when you're blind, because here's the problem. When you have spiritual blindness, you're going to have physical blindness.
That's right.
So,
That's right.
Yeah. So, Shonda, so tell me, how was that looking, and how does that look? Because I tell you this, and what I've seen and how I've interacted with folks from the Caribbean, the Caribbean's really a tall, it's a tall sign in terms of how the world engages. You don't have to necessarily be a virgin island of the U.S. or the British. You kind of get now a more worldly perspective, and not, I mean, not in that sense worldly, but an international perspective of how things are, of that temperament.
Yes. Yes, you do. The thing is, me, I'm kind of like Paul. I'm both, Caribbean as well as I'm born in the U.S. I'm from North Carolina originally. We're born there, from Maryland, but I spent a good couple of years here in my youth. Graduated from school here in the VI. I do have somewhat of an accent, but I don't use my accent too much. But the thing is that the attitude of the people in the Caribbean is a lot different than the attitude of American Blacks, ADOS, because there is it is a cultural difference, even the way slavery was handled. So there is definitely more of a connection, I would think, in the Caribbean to the continent, to the motherland, the way things are done there versus the way things are done in the U.S. And unfortunately, many of our Caribbean brothers and sisters have, like also our brothers and sisters on the continent, received the same damaging information about people within the United States throughout the American descendants of slavery. They've received that information of, the lazy blacks, and if they only work harder and they will be able to do this and they will be able to do that when they come on U.S. soil. So it's important to educate them and help them to understand that, no, this is a part of the propaganda that's been pushed to keep us divided as a people. And that's been really occurring over the last couple of years. I have quite a few very close friends from the Caribbean, and they live in the United States, and I've been able to speak with them and educate them and help them to understand that you only have what you have because you're standing on the shoulders of Black Americans. You're standing on the shoulders of American descendants of slaves, and they are a part of our bloodline. They are Israelites through and through. They're actually, the Most High is using them. He's using Judah in the United States to lead the way and make the clarion call for people throughout the diaspora in the Caribbean, as well as on the continent and in the UK. And so there needs to be a level of respect and homage that is paid to American descendants of slaves for all that they have done. But they're seeing, yes, like you said, Karis, things on a more global level. They're being able to see that we can have a measure of productivity, but they still don't see their own white supremacist biases. Like they don't cling to the Mzungu, if you will, the same way our brothers and sisters who struggle with that in the U.S. do. But they depend on them for trade. They depend on them for resources. They depend on them for things in which we in the United States are saying we can't. We already know the game. We already understand the code. We already understand that they're not going to say black white. They're going to use little terms like urban, and they're going to use different lingo to be able to speak as dog whistles to one another to keep us down. They don't understand that lingo yet. So we need each other. We need to be able to take the good from both areas, both cultures, and marry them together, and to be able to see we're all on one team, just like a husband and wife. They're going to have strengths and they're going to have weaknesses. If we can gather our strengths together, then we'll be so much better. But if we focus on the negative aspects of what we don't bring to the table, then it's going to be constant conflict and fighting, and oh, I'm better than you, and you're under me, and all of that foolishness that none of us can allow. We cannot continue in that vein and see productivity. We cannot continue in that vein and see the unity that the Most High wants to bring us all as He gathers the branches of Judah and Israel together. So there's definite cultural differences, but I'm believing that He's sending ambassadors out. He sent me back here. I had no anticipation to come back here, but I'm using this opportunity to educate my brothers and sisters here about the great work that's going on with my brothers and sisters in the United States.
Yeah, I appreciate your comments, Sister Shonda, because we're getting the feedback from our Jamaican, our Caribbean brothers and sisters, because I live here in Florida. I can't tell you how many Jamaican friends I have. That's the thing, because we grow up around each other, and you understand, literally for the last 5 years, that paradigm of, black folks are lazy. We just kind of sit around and we don't do nothing, and we just are not enterprising,
right,
or pioneering, or innovative. And I like to hear when white people, sorry, I know my Gentiles are in there, no offense, but it's funny when they try to, when they say, well, you know what, America's going through this downward motion. America has been tanking in innovation. And see, what a lot of folks don't get is America has been on a downward trend, truly in the innovative capacity, and that's been since about the 1960s and 1970s. And that was when the whole effort was, okay, well, let's bring in some more skin folks. They look like Black Americans, but we'll put them and we'll divide them like such. And I believe that was very detrimental, not just to Black folks, but to also our Caribbean folks, our African folks, because they didn't understand the game that was being played on them. And so as kind of the quote unquote replacement class came on in here, innovation actually started to wane. Because you want to know why? Necessity is the mother of inventions. And it had been for our inventions that we were trying to just not die. We came off of the fields. We were trying to survive. We were trying to thrive in the land. We're not just in the land of the captivity. Okay. We're in the epicenter. Do you understand? We're in the epicenter of worldwide trade. Hence, that's why we had the World Trade Centers.
right.
Hence, that's why we had the United Nations. So it wasn't to play off of, well, everything's good in the hood here. It was, okay, well, I can now continue to further subjugate them because we now have them in a system of comfort. And I believe that the last 30 years, we were the most comfortable in being the most subjugated and oppressed in our history that we've been here in the United States. And so I'll kind of listen and quote off of Professor Black Truth and the Black Authority, and I'll listen to Tony and Yvette, and that's just because I like the statistics. I don't like the actual the agenda that they have. So let me just kind of clarify that. So the statistics are the numbers. The numbers don't lie. You can try to manipulate the numbers, but you remember, as much as you manipulate the numbers, just like what they did with COVID, it don't matter what you want to say. When you have to start bringing in refrigerated trucks, when you have to start outsourcing things, when other countries are saying, look, this is the data. The deception, the deceit always gets exposed. And so I think that as that deception had been exposed, and it wasn't exposed because all of a sudden black folks said, you want to know what? There's a new thought. No, it was because, listen, I believe the Spirit of the Most High came upon his people. And we looked at the word first. Okay, wait a second. This is happening. That's happening. This is happening. And then by that deductive analysis, then we started to understand this is where we were supposed to be. We were always going to be in this situation. We were always going to see these folks going crazy. No matter how much they tried to say, well, there's Russian influences, there's outside influences. And just think about, that's McCarthyism. When black folks started to say back in the 1960s, well, you want to know what? We really want freedom. I am a man. You are a woman. No more, no more, no less. That's how we need to be treated. And then obviously it gets subjugated, it gets subverted. Well, it's now civil rights, and now it's the LGBTQ agenda, and then they tried that with Black Lives Matter. I'm not for the actual organization, but we all understood the movement. We all understood that there was systemic racism that we're exposing. And now they had hardened their hearts, and they had hardened their hearts so much so that they've actually said, and I believe that this is Senator Susan Collins, if I'm not mistaken, but I'm paraphrasing, that she didn't believe that there was systemic racism.
Mm-hmm.
So so I think we're starting to understand, it's like, wow, they just want to continue to lie, and they don't really care what that lie entails. But it's just like HR 1242. They signed it. They didn't realize that it was the 400 years that they had acknowledged. And it's like, we didn't say, hey, we need to acknowledge the 400 years because this is going to be the Exodus, the greater Exodus, and all this other stuff. We just said, okay, y'all are acknowledging 400 years. You know what comes after that. Just because you want to read some part of the scripture and ignore the other part of the scripture, you can't ignore the other part of the scripture.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And remember, we're like, well, 1619, 2019, look, they were happy. Do you remember Thanksgiving? They were happy. They were like, oh, thank God. We did it. I told you those Negroes are lying. Ha.
Why are they always trying to prove everything about us wrong? I mean, there's like no other people group that has a target on their back than us. I just don't understand, how anybody cannot see how very spiritual this is. Pastor Kelly, he did something. He said, anybody but the Negro. And that's the attitude. It's just like everybody else can have their culture. Everybody else can have their identity. They can desire for their community. But when it comes to us, then we are supposed to be the perpetual children to be whipped and spanked by everybody else. And you're right, Karis. That HR 1242, they told on themselves. They told themselves. They acknowledged the 400 years themselves. But it's laughable to me when they'll get into this back and forth tantrum about whether Biden or Trump is for our community, and they'll say, "Well, look, Trump, he's done more for the Black community than all these other presidents." But when I read in scripture, I see that Pharaoh was also required to do things for Israel that he did not desire to do, and he will pull back as soon as he said, "Okay, I'll go ahead and I'll do this." And then when the judgment eased up, then he'll say, "No, I changed my mind." How we don't see that this is the very same thing acting out. This is exactly the same situation. And I was looking at TD Hip Hop News Network, and he was pointing out that I think it was the 1970s, that there was an actual document that was drawn up so that the focus of Black politics could be taken off of the table, called benign neglect, and put it more on every other demographic of immigrants that were coming in, Mexican, even the natives, they're not immigrants, but the natives, and put it on the Asians, and make sure that their politics gets front and center. That's why when Biden was asked about reparations, specifically for the American descendants of slavery, he jumps into this tirade about the immigrants because they put it on the books. Do not focus on Black issues. Don't focus on the issues pertaining to Black Americans. So I don't see why it is that we expect anything different, except that the hand of the Most High, Yah, makes them do something different.
Yeah, I like to think about it like this, because back in the late 70s, early 80s, my mom was she was a registered nurse in Miami, and they had the Cuban migrants coming on in, and it was interesting. Because with my mom, she's kind of half awake, So because it's harder when you've lived almost 7 decades of your life, and this comes on up, within the last 5 years. It's crept up in the 80s. It's crept up in the 90s. It crept up, right after September 11th. Because we understood it was like, okay, well, if we're going to go to war, we need to try to address some things. And then remember, it kind of waned down. It crept up during Obama's administration. And now during this time where we said, look, the fullness is here. Your time is done. That's what fullness means. It just means it's done. Hey, the fullness of time. Oh, that means when we do what? We bake something in the oven, right? Oh, okay, I need to put this on in there for what? For 40 minutes. To do what? To make sure that my chicken's baked. To make sure that my cake is baked. Well, what do? You put the timer on the clock, on the oven. You set you set your smartwatch. You set everything for that specific amount of time. And then when the time goes off, you are now expecting an outcome or a result that's now favorable to what you were allowing for that process to do. All heat does is just put pressure. Heat is pressure. Let me give you some basic science. Heat is enthalpy. There's stages of enthalpy, right? If you're frozen, your molecules have expanded. Once it expands, guess what? You start to have that contraction. That contraction becomes what? A normal state. You're not frozen. You're more fluid. Mm-hmm. Then guess what? When you start to get hot, believe it or not, when you get hot, the molecules actually come together. That's why when you see the ash and everything else like that, and the burning and the radiation, it's just that the molecules are getting squeezed together. They're getting compacted. Because that's the energy that's being released. So now that energy that's being released, it wasn't the same energy that they thought it was. They've been using energy, but they haven't been using the spiritual energy that the Most High had given us. And so when they tried to say, well, let me give you a gate master, or a taskmaster, let me give you a gatekeeper, let me get you all in check, let's get you all in line. And that taskmaster and that gatekeeper is not just here in the United States. That's throughout the world. And you see that it's no longer working because look at Nigeria with SARS, you know? But when we come together and we came together, we're not on the same page. We got some folks that's still in Kemet. We got some folks that's Rastafarians. We got some folks that are Moorish. It's not coming together. But it doesn't really matter because here's the thing. Not everybody was together in Egypt.
Right.
They even said it. They gave the Israelites an ultimatum. Hey, if you don't partake in this, you will die. How many folks that are Kemetic? How many folks that are Moors? How many folks that are in all these groups? Hey, guess what? Listen, I know what you think. I know what you're doing. I know what you're going through. But guess what? The Most High said, look, this is what's happening. If you don't do this, you're gonna die. They'll still have their red hat on. They'll still have their fez on. Okay, well, let me start painting. Let me get that sheep. let me start doing it. Because why? They know, listen, it took them 40 years to get that doctrine in line. They had to see the Most High face to face. Their hearts weren't in it. We already know that a lot of our folks, their hearts are not going to be in it, even on the day of the Lord. And when we get into the wilderness, guess what they're going to do? They're going to still rebel. We know that. That's the nature. But I see that the loss of control, especially when they're not able to control us. I don't know if you've noticed that, because here's the thing. How many tourists have you all received this year?
The cruise ships are done. That was the majority of the tourism income that was coming in. But the cruise ships have been banned probably before I got here. I got here like in April. And I think it was probably a month before then they said no more cruise ships. So I was asking the other day if they would be coming back, and it was like, no. But you do have people flying in. They've had a couple of weeks where they would have like no tourists. If you did not have any residency here, you couldn't be here. But they lift that probably about a month ago, and you've had quite a few people just flying in because this is the one place where you can fly and you don't have to worry about getting a passport. But thankfully, we have very, very little cases of COVID here. No new cases in the past couple of weeks. But in terms of our economy, and that's what I was kind of getting to a little bit earlier, is that there's still this how do you say, this need for the white supremacist system, because like if you think about what's going over in St. John, for example, that island is predominantly run by the Mzungus. They're small businesses, they're corporations. Even though we control the government, they control the corporations. And you already know when it comes to the reality of things, it doesn't really matter who's controlling things politically if the money is coming from a different source. So I think they're pretty much keeping the islands afloat as far as I know. Now, don't mark my word on that, because I definitely don't know 100%. But as far as the tourism industry, I know that they were very dependent on that, and that has been shut down tremendously. So, it's by the grace of the Most High. And I'm trying to get them to think in terms of, look, guys, even though we are a territory, at some point, what affects the U.S. will affect here at some point. You will need to be able to grow your own economy. You need to build your own economy, use innovation. You talked about, Karis, about how once immigrants came over into the U.S., that's when a lot of innovation stopped. Why? Because there was no necessity, no urge for it the way it was before. And that's one of the problems with complacency. You get complacent into the same system, and you don't see the devastating need to change the way you think, to change your dependence on the old guard, on the old system. And I'm trying to help them to understand, like, no, you have to wake up and use your resources for you. Don't feel like you've got to continue to depend on the government, or not the government, but yeah, the government too, but the corporations of this world, because they're falling and they're failing. Babylon is falling, and you don't want to fall with it because you're dependent on them. So that's kind of what we're dealing with out here in this region.
And you know, I'm glad you brought that on up because in one of my classes I have an analyst for Raymond James Financial. It's a company that's out here in the Tampa Bay area. And he was saying, like, yeah, they're going through corporate restructuring. And, you know, you only go through restructuring if you realize you're not going to have the same amount of profit. You know, they're either instead of laying people off, they're trying to reduce salaries, or trying to do all that they can to kind of keep things quote unquote normal, you know, if you will. And that's almost a fallacy in thought, because what happens when things have changed and you're still trying to operate on normal and you don't adapt to the change? And so, yeah, I think we're not understanding this. See, the rest of the world is adapting to the new change. America hasn't adapted. And that's why you honestly see America's really getting left behind in a lot of respects. And so, with that being said, I don't think America realizes just how bad of a situation that they're in. And we try to, and see, the thing is that for us, we've tried to do everything that we could do for this last 400 years. Hey, you know, it's not looking too good, or, you know, things are not the way that they should be. You need to kind of look at this. You need to kind of look at that. We have had a history, especially for those that have come up from families that were enslaved here. We have been able to kind of build on our own, but that building model, it always gets destroyed, and then it gets taken over by them. So,
Oh, yeah.
so, you know, and that's not to say, you know, oh well, you know, the Caribbean, you know, they can't fare without us. No, it's not to say that. They purposefully use the Caribbean as the training grounds, because they use those islands to break people. That
Mhm.
that was you. Hey, you know, we have this person, we got these folks, they want to continue to talk about the Hebrew culture. They wanted to use their Semitic language. Now let's break them down. Let's break them off.
Mm.
Because
Right.
they were able to carry that. That's what Marcus Garvey, he had that influence.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and they knew that. Then what, after they did that, then they broke them down again fiscally. And so that's where we were at. We were literally in the comfort of destruction, of being the most destroyed. We had our legs ripped off. We had our arms ripped off. We were getting chewed up by wolves. It's just carcass, just a little bit of flesh left on our bone. Matter of fact, they were already just chewing the bones right into the marrow.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, look, the Most High said, "Hey, y'all are the people." And it's not, he's not going to give you a volume. Hey, I'm going to sit down with you and you're going to go through and learn everything. You know, you're going to go into a cave. No,
Mm.
no. The Most High doesn't do that. He never did that he never did that in the Word. If you looked at Elijah during that time of Ahab, Elijah wasn't the only prophet at that time. It was just that Elijah was speaking on out. But what did the Most High say to Elijah? He said, "Look, I still have 7,000 that have not built, that have not bowed their knee to Baal." And so when Elijah got out of hiding, he went on over to Ahab and told him, like, "Look, this is what's going to happen. I'm going to challenge Baal." So if you think about this, we got the spiritual wake-up call to where we've come on out and we're challenging Baal. We've come on out and we've made a proclamation against Baal. We've said, hey, listen, Baal is no longer going to use racism. Because what were we saying? Hey, here's historical facts. We know we're the people. It's been proven. It's been genetically proven, historically proven, geographically proven. There are more things that are being shown than we have ever seen in our entire lifetimes. Would you had ever thought that the DNA let the cat out of the bag? You see what I'm saying, Sister Shonda? Kind of give me your take, because I look at that from that historical perspective that, this phenomenon is just a bit too much.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. And, again, Pastor Kelly and Pastor Majors, they were talking about the whole issue of DNA the other day. And I think it was Candace Loves. I think she might even be in the building right now. She was saying about, the Most High was the one who let me know that I am the seed of Israel, and that's enough for me. And that was my attitude. Like, that is enough for me, because he had made himself known in so many ways, through totally different people. And no, it was not about at any point about the camps. Matter of fact, I didn't even know, have a conversation with the camps until way after, years after I found out that we were the people. But like you said, this awakening, it is not some local thing. It is not just happening in the United States. It is happening everywhere. Even here, I was speaking to a former classmate who had recognized me, and he was asking me about, about my faith and everything. And I said, well, I'm an Israelite. I said, I said I'm a Christian at first, but then I was like, but I'm an Israelite. He said, oh, you're Israelite? I said, yeah. He was like, that's right, Israel. And it was like he knew, like that there's this sense that the Most High is putting in his people throughout the world, that they don't always understand all of it. They don't understand, you say halfway, they don't understand really what it means, the implication of what it means to be a seed of Israel. But there is something that's happening on the inside of our brothers and sisters to where we are all coming to the same understanding. And then you take DNA, like Pastor Majors and Kelly were doing, and drive it home with the DNA. And it's like, okay, we're connected to this group here in West Africa. Now, I am definitely not an expert on it, so I don't even want to sound like I know what I'm half talking about. But when I was looking at them and they were showing how close a percentage they were to, I think it was the Yoruba people and the Igbo tribes, they were saying, okay, the closer that they are, as far as numbers, percentage-wise, that means the closer they are connected to those people. And I was just seeing like how everything is corroborating who we are. Everything is telling the story of who we are. The geographical locations are being found out with the work that Teo was doing with the maps, and science with the DNA. Of course, the word is just becoming alive unto us, and we're seeing ourselves like we never saw ourselves before in the word. And it can only be supernatural. It is literally the sinews being put on back onto the bones, back onto those dry bones, calling us to be that army that he wants us to be. And I just give him glory, because I see his hand at work, and nobody, I don't care how they try to come against us, nobody can stop the move of God. That's the bottom line. And when he's finished with this whole thing, everyone will know who we are.
So I look at that, Ashonda, and I have the questions that always goes into my mind. We have been picked on. We've been picked on, and
Yeah.
just think about that because um, they know how to bully us. If you don't really know your identity because it was strategically and masterfully manipulated to where they were trying to hide it as best as they could. Well, guess what you actually have really low self-esteem.
Right.
They would all look. Listen, I grew up. I grew up in the 80s and 90s, and I remember, you got to have high self esteem, right? They would give you that. Well, you need to have this self esteem and that self esteem, and that will get you to where you want to go. Well, systemically, that works if you actually have foundation. They like to come around. Look, I'm German. I'm Italian. I'm Polish. I'm Czech. I'm Norwegian. Swedish. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Mm-hmm.
Filipino. I'm Taiwanese. They have a foundation,
Right.
but then they come to us. Well, you're just African. Well, they do that because okay, they had to lower our self esteem, and they know it. They knew it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
and now when we are understanding, oh yeah, we're coming to our senses. Well, who told you that? I never told you that because I didn't want you to validate yourself. Because the moment that you validate yourselves, you start opening your mouth and you start asking questions. And when you start asking questions, you want to know the truth.
Yes.
And when you start understanding that a lot of the questions were never addressed, remember, they never addressed anything for Black History Month. When Black History Month died? Black History Month died. I'm going to tell you, it died February 28th, 2017. It did. It did. Because then we had Black History Month, February of 2018, and people are like, hey, guess what? Now I don't just subscribe to being African. I'm subscribing to being Hebrew. And we have this, we have Igbos, we have Yoruba, we have all this stuff, we have Lembas. Then what happened February 2019? It's like, look, stop catering to us with this Black History Month mess
Right.
because we know who we are.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, mine's terrible thing to wait. We're all African Americans. No, we're not African Americans.
Mm-hmm.
We're not Black folks. We're not a byword.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Look, here's the DNA to prove it. And then look, February 2020, guess what? They hardly mentioned Black History Month. Think about that. They said,
Yeah.
coronavirus is coming. Coronavirus is coming. Because remember, that was during all the task force, and they had everybody spun up on the Rona. They had everybody spun on up. They were just like, nah, we forget it. Forget it. Because the more that they would come up with that Black History Month to try to change that narrative, it wasn't working. And it was actually more truth exposed than what they were trying to provide. You can't just say, well, you want to know what? I need you to go to the store.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, I need you to run an errand. Can you go to the store for me?
Mm-hmm.
Well, what do you need at the store? Oh, don't worry about it. I just need you to go to the store for me.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're going to ask, what do you need at the store? There's so many things at the store. There's eggs, there's bread, there's milk, there's chitlins now.
At Leave them chitlins alone.
Are you ever talking about that pork? You gotta get that pork thing. This big feet. Lord, forgive me. Father, forgive me.
You fasted today, Karis. Look at you thinking about something.
I want me some cornbread. I want me some green.
Look, everything look extra good when you fasted, okay?
You know, as soon as you say fast, every soul food item comes to the menu.
Yes. Oh my goodness.
I want some fried chicken with some brown gravy, with some black eyed peas and rice.
Oh my goodness. I'm trying, y'all. Pray for us, sister. I'm trying to get through it myself.
Oh man. But yeah, I'm sorry. I tangent. I know it's black folks. You know, we can't be getting off of subjects because we be talking about the old.
Right, we all trying to plan who going to start the next cookout after this fast. But no, man, what you saying? You know, you're speaking some relevance. You know, you talked about how Black History Month finished in 2017, and really, you know, when you think about it, the more we disengage with the system, the more the system shows itself that it's not going to stand without us. We are the bones, the skeletal system that the American Babylonian system must depend on in order to thrive. When we decide to check out, we say, okay, I don't want to participate in your traditions anymore. I'm done with your Black History Month. I'm done with your Christmas. I'm done with your Thanksgiving. I'm done with your Valentine's Day and all these things that you've been able to use to keep me broken spiritually, ignorant, and even financially broken. Because you got folks still paying on Christmas gifts from year and 2 years before because of all the credit card debt that they had. People $70,000 and $90,000 in credit card debt over these traditions. We're backing away from this garbage. And now we're seeing the system is falling apart. This is why all over the news, they keep saying, oh, the black vote, the black vote. We need the black vote. If we don't have the black vote, or we don't have coronavirus, we don't have the testers in the African-American community for coronavirus, we're not going to be able to put out a good vaccine. Everything is like coming back to us. And we said, yeah, no, I'm good. I'm out. You know, I'm not those bywords. I'm not that person that you told me I was anymore. So therefore, I'm going to learn who I am. I'm going to read the Most High's word and find out who I am and what he wants me to do, what he's called me to do. I'm going to connect with my people and I'm going to love my people. I'm not going to be fighting amongst myself anymore. We're going to love each other, and that's going to break you. See, we don't even have to try to break them. In the sense that we just turn away from all of their systems, the system itself will just crumble, period. And that's why I believe the Most High is, you know, he's showing me. It's like when I used to smoke cigarettes. Many, many years ago, I smoked cigarettes. And I realized that once I got free from smoking cigarettes, I had more money in my pocket. And it's the same thing. When we come out of the system, then we have more freedom. We have more ability to think and move the way that the Most High has always wanted us to move.
So you were smoking with cigarettes.
Man, I look, that was BC. BC is a long time ago, but yes, I keep it 100. You know, I am not a perfect vessel, but I'm marching toward the calling. You know, and that is what I desire to do, is to rid myself of all those things that keep me from my Father's heart. So yeah, that's gone with the wind.
You know, I was bringing up the Boondocks reference. You know, meet 8-year-old Tyrone. 8-year-old Tyrone was joyriding in his grandmother's car. And you know, Now, back in the day, before I was awoken to everything, it was comical because um, you didn't realize that they were actually true stories. The young man, or the I would say the young child at that time, he had national and international notoriety. And the sad thing is, he actually ended up going to jail for the rest of his life when he turned 18 years old.
Mm.
And we would laugh, and unwittingly, we were just laughing at our own destruction because nobody wants to have a child. I don't want to see my 8-year old, my 18-year-old daughter, my 14-year-old son, my 12-year-old daughter being in jail. Nobody wants to see that. And I wouldn't want them, if they had been in that jail, to be made a mockery of.
Mhm.
And the sad thing is, we actually have had a very sick system done to us. It was the worst of the worst in terms of being mentally manipulated. Hey, laugh at your destruction.
Right.
Laugh at laugh at laugh at your young men and your young women being raped.
Right.
Laugh laugh at your children being turned into homosexuals.
Hmm.
Laugh at your young daughters wanting to act like men. Laugh at your young boys wanting to act like girls. I don't know if anybody's seen the Good Lord, Good Bird or whatever. It's a remake about John Brown, or Osawatomie John Brown, right? And just on the show tries to give the historical context of what John Brown was saying. And I believe that this was the case because obviously Showtime wasn't going to say this at all. I believe in historical writings of John Brown knew that we're Israelites because John Brown he was actually on the cusp. He was right off of the cusp of Nat Turner because John Brown's story was about 1830 to literally about 2 years before the Civil War. He was the actual one that started the Civil War. He got the abolitionists with Frederick Douglass, and he got them to fight. He was the catalyst.
Hmm.
But in the show, the reason I know all this is because I used to live in Kansas City when I was from like 24 years old to about when I was about 25. So almost a good 10, 11 years. So yeah, so his area in Osawatomie was literally about 30 miles away. So I would go on out there. I went on out there with my mom. We would like to see, real. In my opinion, that was real Black history, not like the stuff that they would give to us. Hey, this is about a person that actually cared about us because he really believed that we're the children of Israel. He really believed that we're the Israelites. But you're not going to hear that in the contemporary history books. That wasn't going to happen. But it's just interesting how they would try to flip that narrative, and that's how they always do it. Ha ha, he. It's a funny show. It showed that he was a crazy white guy that believed that the children of Israel were in captivity, and he was what you would consider right now. He understood what was going to happen. He understood Genesis 15, 12 through 14. He wanted to actually atone or try to make some sort of an atonement because he realized, oh man, the generations behind me are going to be in captivity because of what we did. But I'm not going to go on and elaborate. But the story of the show was there was the 14-year-old boy that's part of like the lead character. He kind of tells the narration. He's dressed up in women's clothing.
Oh.
Do you hear what I'm saying? He's dressed up in women's clothing. And let me provide some context. So the opening scene, I'm not going to give this away, so you can all watch it if you want to, because it is actually very historical, because it shows all the stuff that he was doing within the Kansas City area, the Kansas City, the Kansas Missouri side of everything. So it does provide historical context, because it also shows why we also had Black folks that knew that they're Israelites going into Oklahoma and Kansas territory. But what was going on during that time? The young boy's father had died, and because of his nickname kind of being like around a girl's name, John Brown thought that he was a girl. And so because the boy was like, look, I'm not trying to deal with slavery. I know about slavery because he was released from slavery by John Brown. He just did what John Brown had thought. Okay, I think that you're a girl, so therefore you're a girl. And unfortunately, John Brown didn't know any of the wiser, because the 14-year-old boy was just like, look, I'm not going to say anything that could get me in trouble. Because of why? Because of mental conditioning.
Hmm.
And that was sad it's sad to see that and think about that.
Yeah.
He's just trying to survive. And he has to he's wearing a dress because he's trying to survive. But then you have to think about this. Think about this in the contemporary sense. We have to wear what they have been telling us to wear because we've all been trying to survive. Right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
We try to wear being their label of success. And you got to understand, when we stop saying, look, we don't want to act or emulate what you think, quote unquote, success is, then that makes them uncomfortable. I mean, think about how we have been told, hey, wear your hair like this.
Yeah.
Right? You have to have a relaxer so they can relax. I remember my mom in the 80s getting the straightened up hair, and it messed her hair up.
Mm-hmm.
I remember the jury curls with my family, and it was messing our hairlines up, and we didn't care. Oh, exactly. You need to get that thing fixed. I remember, folks were trying to rock the S curls, and then all that lie was messing them up.
Well, we found out just maybe about a year or two ago that 90% of the hair care products targeted towards Israelite women have chemicals in them that induce all kinds of problems on the inside of the body, like fibroids, cancer. So it's not just putting this thing on the hair because it's fashionable and it straightens your hair out. It's going inside of your bloodstream. And our women have had to get whole hysterectomies because they have put this stuff in the hair and they're addicted to it. Absolutely addicted to it. So, even before I knew who I was as Israel, some 22 years ago, I had decided to grow my hair natural. But I hate colorism. I'm going to say that from the jump. My grandfather is Puerto Rican. So I have kind of a little kinky, little curly hair. And when I was in school, when my hair would grow out from the perm, people would say, "Oh, you got good hair." As to say that if my hair wasn't fully coiled, what's the opposite? So fully coiled hair is bad hair. That bothered me from a child, because at the end of the day, for one thing, none of us decides how we're going to look. Okay, that's first and foremost. But we've been trained to think of the most ethnic of our women as though they're somehow inferior if they have wider noses, if they have high melanin, if they have very kinky, coily hair. If they have these things, then all of a sudden they're not beautiful. If they have wide hips and bosoms that are full. But we can see that the European women who have become the model and the standard of beauty, they go to great lengths to get all of those things which the Most High has blessed his daughters with. And so we have to come out of that mind control. Like you said, the way we have been trained to dress, to think, this is what success looks like. Put on the monkey suit, as they call it, right? For the men, put on the three-piece suit and the tie. Make sure your hair is shaved in a particular way. For our women, make sure that your hair is straight or loosely curled. We even know how to change the way we speak, how to just the tone of our voice when we're dealing with the European demographic. I was so blessed the other day because I got an opportunity on Shabbat to tell my Jewish neighbor that I'm a bloodline Israelite. And the way, she did one of these clickbacks like, "Oh, what?" And she's like, "I'm Jewish." I said, "Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know." And so I was just so thankful to be able to flow in who I am, my identity, unashamed. And that's why when I spoke a couple of weeks ago with my brother Stephen and his beautiful wife Isha, I was saying that we are accepted in the beloved, all the way he has made us. He made us the way he wanted us. He made us after his likeness, in his image. And if we could understand that and receive that and love that, then our minds are getting delivered and free from the matrix that has been pulled over all of our eyes. So yeah, we've got to fully pulled out of the system that has been that's been thrust upon us, unfortunately. I can't wait to see my restored language.
It's funny. I living in New Jersey because I spent about 10 years in New Jersey from the time I was about 5 years old till I was about 14, and I moved to Kansas City. So I had cousins in the South Jersey area, and they were mixed with Puerto Rican blood, and here I am. I had the curl, and my curls would be beady, so I really didn't get good waves without that orange cream, the orange can, the black can. My stuff would bead on out, and I'd be like, why can't I have the good hair like my cousin? They had the little finger waves and everything else. Mm-hmm. And then they had that Puerto Rican accent. It's like, hey, you have black. How you have a Puerto Rican accent? Amen. You from South Jersey? How you gonna have a Puerto Rican accent? Because of Karis, listen. I just had to crack on up, like, it serves them. It serves them because you could tell that they're Puerto Rican. You could tell, and then they'd be like, "Yeah, that's a cousin. That's my cousin right there." And I, from like I just looked at a photo as I'm like going on in here, and I'm scrolling on through, and there was something from Jace Clover, and I had to do a double take. I said, because that profile picture, it looked like me when I was growing up, you know. But that's where it's crazy because our shades, and this is how they played us. They played us really bad on this one because our shades are so different as Black people. Man, you'll literally have the lightest of your light. Just think about this. Let's just think about this. Think about 64 of your family members. Think about this. Everybody, this is now a thinking cap. Think about 64 of your family members, not 100, 64. And now go over the spectrum and just think about how many of those 64 family members are lightest of the light and could pass as white. How many albinos will we find? Just think about that. Because I have some family members that are light. They're lighter than me.
Right.
Black, both parents Black. So if you all go on the Hebrew sphere, I have my photos on out there. I just don't do it here on YouTube and everything else, just because we have some crazy folks here on YouTube. You know what I'm saying? And I don't need them to be showing on up to the crib, because if they show on up, then, something else is going to show on up. And that's all I got to say. I am in Florida. I'll be standing my ground like it's nobody's business.
You know, them folks in Florida is crazy, right?
Show on up. Let me.
I hear you, brother. I hear you.
But just think about that. Think about how much of a speckled bird we are.
Yes.
Because I'm light. I'm lighter than my brother. Both parents. I was talking to my cousin the other day. My cousin's light, just like me, and her sister is dark, just like my brother. And we both, and our fathers are both identical twins. Her mother was just a little bit darker than my mom. My mom is light, my complexion. But we still have the same DNA that we will produce darkest of the dark to the light of the light.
Yes.
It's crazy.
Well, my daughter, I'll tell y'all a little joke. When she was born, and back when when I was going to church, and I took her to church one day, and my friend, she comes up to me and she says, "The milkman been by your house?" Because she was so pasty white, and she had blonde hair and blue eyes when she was born. And now, she's got a little bit of a tan. Her hair is like dirty blonde, brownish, and she's got green eyes. But compare her next to my eldest son, and he is highly melanated. He's that Mandingo warrior melanated, and he's tall and, handsome and everything. And it's just like, again, having 9 children, I've got the whole darn rainbow coalition up in my house. Okay. I just, everybody is a different shade, and yet they all still have their very Negro features. They all came from the same blood. My husband, is probably about cocoa brown. He's ADOS. And at the end of the day, you can't do that with other cultures. You can't do that with other people groups. You can only do that with us. The beauty of how we were created as Joseph's multicolored coat. That's what we are. So yeah, I just think that's the beauty of the Most High, showing Himself through His people, that we don't have to be ashamed of, no matter how much melanin we have or how little melanin we have. We are His blood. So that's what I love.
But you have to remember, because we have a spectrum of melanin, and our spectrum is something that is the variety. You know what I'm saying? I was just reading this this post from Candace. The Hershey tone. Well, here's the thing. The funny thing is, Hershey. They how many varieties of Hershey Kisses do they have? They have the caramel, they have the vanilla, they have the white or the cookies and cream, right?
Mm-hmm.
They have the dark
Mm-hmm.
chocolate, they have the chocolate. They have the whole spectrum,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where we're on at. We have the whole spectrum,
Yeah.
but we have been so Willie lynched, that it was the light, bright, darn near white, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we all had this because we understood how our family was. We understood how our families were.
Mm-hmm.
Look, we have family members that were products of rape. Everybody knows that. What was your
Mm-hmm.
grandfather? Well, my great great grandfather, he was a white man.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we don't really speak much about him, but then my great grandfather, and then this and that, and then we all got back into the color line. When people talk about like interracial marriages and things of that nature being so prevalent amongst Black people, I said that, not really.
Mm-hmm.
It's not really prevalent amongst Black people.
Mm-hmm.
Most of us, I think the numbers they're saying like between maybe 94 and 97%. Is an interracial. That's the total makeup.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to know what that means? Literally within about 2 or 3 generations, they're right back.
Right.
They've reverted right back to being Black. You may have a couple of different, nuances that come on out of there. Of some blue eyes, blonde hair, things of that nature. But for the most part, that's really been our genetic makeup being here in the United States. But then you got to remember, then even what happened during the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Actually, I would contend back in the 20s, back in the 30s. You had a demographic subset in the United States amongst Black folks, and they'd say, "Well, you want to know what? You're light skinned, so you can speak for us, right?" They would equate being light skinned for intelligence.
Right.
And I always thought that. I said, there's always a problem with that. I said, I never thought about that. I was like, no, that's definitely a fallacy of thought. I said, listen, I thought about my grandmother, and she's from South Carolina. She's a singleton, straight from out of Gifford. So if you know in the chat, if you know any Giffords from out of Singletons from out of Gifford, South Carolina, right on Route 321. I visited there the first time earlier this year. I drove on up there, and I went on through, and they said, "Yeah, your kinfolk are around here." It was country. I'm not gonna lie, it was country. Why don't you go knock on their house? Let them know you kinfolk. I said, I would, but I said I'm a city boy from Tampa. Listen, if I knock on somebody's house in Tampa, they're gonna pull a gun on me and ask questions later.
Right.
And so, when I looked, though, it was funny because that same area was where a lot of the slave trade had gone to, especially from out of Charleston. And if you've ever seen like Hebrew Nation building and things of that nature, they would go through. They went to Charleston one day, and they actually had everything explained. How that was one of the most major slave ports and different times and different factions. It started as the Hampton Roads area that started as a major slave port, and that's where my grandfather was up on out of, and in that area towards the northern North Carolina area, Virginia Beach, that whole construct. So a lot of us, we know where we primarily had landed in with our families. We can go back to there because they and this is the thing that I think is a little bit overblown, and I would like to see some historians kind of give some studies to provide relevance to this. I really don't think that you had as much activities of selling for the selling of our people as the movies had made it sound. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because
you mean like our people selling each other or
well, I think like being sold into slavery or being sold, from one master to the next.
Right.
Where we're just commodities, just like stock.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to think about this. I said, you want to know why that they probably didn't do that? And that was probably historically inaccurate. Because remember, they don't even want to tell you how many slave revolts there had been.
That's true.
They don't want to tell you how many slave masters had been murdered from their slaves. So if I'm a slave master, right? And I hear all these stories, all these slaves getting, taking up arms, killing off the slave masters in their house when they're sleeping. I don't think that I would really try to piss off a lot of the people that make me rich. You see what I'm saying? What they try to say is, look, you were in slavery but you never had any type of power. And I don't think that was the case.
Right.
I think that what it wasn't obviously mutual, but there was the fine line. That was that fine line understanding. Look, you can whip me, you can do as much as you want, but guess what you're gonna have now? Guess what you're gonna have? You're gonna be looking down at the barrel because you done made some black folks mad.
Right.
Don't think that these white folks didn't know what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, Gabriel Prosser had happened right before Nat Turner. Before there's the Gullah Wars were still often going. These folks were knowing, look, the slave is that's like a pit bull.
Right.
You beat that pit bull good enough, that pit bull is gonna bite you. Mm-hmm. Not only does he bite you, he locks on until he's good and ready to let go.
That's why they had to do so much mind control, because they knew that just trying to control the physical body of the Negro wasn't going to work. You had to play these mind tricks in order to make us accept our subjugation, and that's why they've been far more effective with keeping us oppressed since the so-called emancipation took place. They've been far more effective with that version of mental slavery than anything, because I think they credit Harriet Tubman, with saying that she would have freed so many more slaves if she could only convince them that they were slaves. To me, I feel like that's way more now. You could free so many more of our brothers and sisters if you can show them, like you were talking about going on Tone Talks, show them the data. Because people seem to think that, if I got a little house, a little mortgage, a little car, and a little job, then I'm doing all right. But they're literally living from paycheck to paycheck with $70,000, $80,000 in student loan debt, credit card debt, mortgage, all of those things. They are slaves to the system. And so they've done far greater damage this way than they did then in terms of being able to sustain their economic goals, not in terms of physicality and what they did to the physical body. And I think if we only equate slavery with what's done to the physical body, then we're missing the greater impact that slavery has. So just think about the mental health issues within our community. Tremendous mental health issues that get thrown under the rug. Because when we deal with what's going on mentally, spiritually with us, then you have an outcry of, look, I'm tired of being beaten down in the mind. I'm tired of being spiritually ignorant of who I am. Then you got the bully factor that takes place. Oh, you're just talking nonsense. Oh, you're just complaining. But you couldn't do that to a physical slave because there was nobody denying that that person was physically enslaved. Now, we say we're enslaved in a different way outside of the prison industrial complex. I'm enslaved in a different way. And all of a sudden it's, oh, no, you're just, don't you know that you're the most prosperous Negroes that have ever existed? I've heard that line before. What about the NBA? What about Oprah? Like, okay, thanks. You pulled out like a handful of Negroes. So I guess we're all doing well now, right? But that's what happens. So, that's the sad part. Brother, I do have to get ready to go. Unfortunately, this has been awesome, but my kids will burn down the house at some point if I don't leave and go check on them. So I really appreciate just being here and thank you all so much, for just being all of us collectively coming together, seeing the importance of us fasting and praying, especially on this day, because our King wants our heart again.
Hallelujah. All right. I appreciate you coming on, Sister Shonda. And I'm gonna get ready to wrap this on up. So I appreciate you, family, for showing on up. I know that this was something that was impromptu. I didn't really give any like a week or heads up or things of that nature. But I really just want us to just keep focused on the Most High. And that focus of being on the Most High, look, we're in a new season. We know who our identity is. And now, once we kind of, I think of it like this. We kind of took a little bit of a mental, it was a mental break. And it wasn't to say that Yeshua HaMashiach isn't Christ. It's not to say that everybody now doesn't have salvation because they're trusting on Yeshua HaMashiach's blood. It's not to say that we've changed up a doctrine so left that it's going to make your head spin. No, it's not. But you had to remember when we understood who we were, everybody, look, it's an emotionalism. Just think about when people find out who they're adopted are, that they were adopted, and then they find their birth parents. You're going to cry because it's just a natural response. But then you have to understand, okay, I did things out of emotionalism, but I need to now understand the Most High, he's not emotional. He's not emotional. He doesn't want you to fear anything. He doesn't want you to get upset. He just wants you to trust in him. Because we've all gone through those battles, and we just have to say, listen, I don't care what anybody says, the Most High has me. Hallelujah. Thank you, Yeshua HaMashiach. See, we're here to be a light to the nations. We know who Yeshua HaMashiach is. We now have a better understanding of who Yeshua HaMashiach is. We now have a better understanding of who Jesus Christ is. Because it was hard to kind of equate it if you didn't really know the people. But that's not to say that we're just going to say, well, you know what? It's our salvation only. No, that's not what the word says. Because we're building up the kingdom. So, with that being said, yes, are we seeing this nation being judged? Absolutely. But this is a time to see the kingdom really being built. So, with that said, family, thank you again for coming on out and supporting this broadcast with Ashonda, and also please go and support Ashonda's broadcast later on tonight. Okay, and I'm pretty sure that we'll probably hear something from Sister E, from Dante and Teo, more than likely. And if not, just drop a line on Hebrew Sphere. I'm gonna be on Hebrew Sphere all day. So please, 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 if you have any questions, concerns, let me know. I'm more than amenable. I'm here. Look, the Most High has me available for this season. So hallelujah, hallelujah. So with that said, family, again, thank you, Ashonda.
Thank you, Karis. It was such an awesome time, and I definitely want to do this again. And just thank you for the work that you're doing, because it's necessary. I let you know that I usually start my mornings listening to your discussions. So unless it's crazy around my house, I said, let me go put on Covenant Awakenings and see what Karis has to say. So I really appreciate all that you're doing, and I thank everybody for supporting us, because this is a definite ministry that the Most High is calling each of us to for His glory. So thank y'all so much for just being here and loving on us the way that y'all do.
All right, family. Now, with that being said, again, if you want to donate, that will be in the description below. I will be coming on out with some more great content, definitely tomorrow. If things don't go crazy, I hope to still have internet and lights on if things don't go crazy. So as long as I'm able to talk and say something, you're gonna hear my voice. So with that, family, shalom, salama, siemi, shalom, peace and blessings, Israel.